feedback, comments, roadmap ideas, other topics of conversation you want to bring up. We've got about 15 or 20 minutes until networking and drinks. I think most of the presenters from today are still here, and a number of people from the JADE team. So any questions? We've covered everything. Yes. This guy. Here, who is your question going to be for?
No idea actually. But it's a question on the new WebSockets. What's the licensing work for the WebSockets, given that it's usually concurrent connections? But if you've got 1,000 connections out to your website users so you can send something to them, how does the licensing work for WebSockets?
I won't assume any further JADE licenses because they're all piggybacked on a web session. In IIS, so you're just opening basically channels on that piggyback on. So they'll be connecting to some back-end application in JADE. So if you're already using, say, you've got web services interacting with JADE or browsers, mobile phones already, and you want to open a bi-directional channel, you can do that, and the licensing won't change unless you need to add more processing or a
The short story is it shouldn't anymore. This license requirements for your JADE system, because you'll be using, if you've already got a session between a browser or a mobile device to a service in JADE, that's there. And with WebSockets, you're opening additional TCP channels piggybacked on that session. Does that make sense, or?
Not really, but it's a very does.
Effectively, Steve, all the web stuff is multiplexed through to a web server, which is using the JADE license. So you can have hundreds of web connections all being serviced by one JADE web service.
If JADE decided it needed to send something to one of those connections, how would it know that it hasn't still got that connection?
We're not holding a process license, certainly.
The assumption is you've got existing sessions open, and now you've got additional ones doing things like push notifications. So that was trying to subscribe to JADE level and use it to broadcast notifications across their software. That's one.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, I was just covering a common scenario for WebSockets is to do something called push notifications, equivalent of event notifications in JADE, but to browsers and mobile devices that have got an HTTP connection open. So the idea is it's piggybacked on that connection. Multiplex is the correct word. Yeah, I like it. It'll work.
Any other questions?
Other questions? Yes.
What's the strategy for increasing JADE sales?
Didn't you ask that each of the last 3 years?
I'm waiting for an answer.
Good man. Our policy remains, and is the same answer as it has been for the last 3 years. We're trying to make JADE as relevant and compelling as possible for our existing users. We're seeing an increase in usage based on our existing customers and partners. It's going up around year on year, generally around 10%. We would love to see more people using the JADE platform. We constantly are trying to think of ways that we can enable that, but we're, realistically, we're not signing up new development shops to use JADE, apart from in peculiar circumstances. One of my hopes is that with Ashley coming on board as the new product manager, she'll think of something that we haven't been able to think of for a long time. But the fact is we are finding it very difficult to encourage new people to use Jade from scratch. I don't know what you want me to say.
Right. Earlier in the day you talked about making Jade easy to run in the cloud. So can you outline some of the things that you're going to do to make that easy?
So the question was a request to outline some of the things we're thinking about to enable cloud deployment and management to be easier for the future roadmap, correct? So Hugh or John, if either of you want to speak to that. I know there's been some specific thinking about that.
So there are a couple of things, certainly around scalability. You know, this, the concept of bringing up app service and down when resources are required. So there's some area around there, and also some of our utilities could do with being more usable in that space that don't need to have, you know, the sort of services that we currently do for those utilities. Anything else you?
Yeah, we want to do a lot more testing of the operation to expose any issues, and if people have challenges, if people have tried sort of containerizing services, that's something we want to test. So using Docker containers, we want to look at how we package Jade so that you can slice out the components you need to just what you need to build a container, that sort of stuff. So that's around discovering the challenges, but we'd welcome any feedback from users that have been trying it, what the pain points are, so we can address them. We'll be starting off with Azure, but we probably want to bring in AWS as well.
So that concept of bringing up a test environment
Yes.
just for a period of time and throwing it away is
Yep.
Just on that topic, Hugh, in terms of using Docker or doing a build container and that, like, I think in previous meetings with John Ascott, we're talking about setting up an install that could be used just from a command line, which you can't do at the moment.
That's kind of what I was talking about with packaging. Exactly that, making it easier, presenting it, so the equivalent of what you do in the Linux environment where there's lots of package
You just do a
managers.
command line install.
Yeah, you need to be able to build from your Docker file, build it in a scriptable manner.
Yeah.
That's obvious, so we'll learn how to do that. We'll probably provide sample Docker files, maybe even base images, but I will tend to avoid that. You guys can build those. So anyway.
Here you go. Can I give you this?
Yeah, just back on the event bus. Do you see that as a replacement for the RPS scenario?
I would see it sitting alongside its complementary technology. So the client I mentioned, I asked today, they're not using RPS, so they go straight to that. If you're already an RPS user, you wouldn't just throw it out because it does other things that this scenario may not cover, so they can be side by side. And yeah, so that would be my thoughts on that. But you could start doing things that RPS does for you, as well as populating these more advanced platforms as well.